we have a bunch of allegedly leaked test messages from the Charlie Kirk shooter. Again, allegedly. Some of this stuff, we may find out tomorrow that it's unconfirmed, because that's been the state of all of the information coming out of all of this. But first, let's go ahead and take a look at the fan art section. This is from Hazel, said, to add to the ever-growing list of different Suris variants, I decided to create Sirius, a fusion between Cirrus and Suris. My god, that is terrifying. That really is terrifying. But since we're already here, since we're already looking at this, maybe it would be a good idea for me to show you guys something that Pernia's been working on for a little bit. So here in the next couple weeks, I'm gonna actually have a bit of just a wee bit of merch available for you all. After everything y'all have put me through with all of these different Surises, the Suris playmat. Well, Suris and Cirrus and Russus and did every fucking other one. That playmat with the army of slime Surises in the background is going to be available for sale on my merch store. Now, that does mean the Netcoin playmat is going to be taken down off the merch store, as I'm only going to be offering one playmat at a time. But just letting you guys know, that is something that will be available here in about 2 weeks. With that said, I'm going to go ahead and let you guys know we are going to be getting into the serious part of the video, the exclusive leaked messages from the alleged Charlie Kirk assassin. BRB, I need to order a Netcoin. Well, it is available on Fourth Wall, so definitely pick that up if you have not already. But let's go ahead and take a look at what's going on here. So, these messages are all going to be shown here. Some bits are going to be censored, obviously, to maintain the privacy of certain individuals involved. But let's go ahead and see what we've got here. And this is all coming from KenKlippenstein.com. Hey guys, I have some bad news for you all. Here we are. So here's a group chat where one person says, Charlie Kirk got shot dead. I just saw the video. Holy shit. Rip, I guess. Bro didn't deserve to go out like that. Sad. And then we have this user, Zealous Monkey 55095. Now, Zealous Monkey is allegedly the Utah shooter that killed Charlie Kirk. Cheesy Goober says, I'm trying to oil up. Alrighty. Hey guys, I have some bad news for you all. It was me at the university yesterday. I'm sorry for all of this. I'm surrendering through a sheriff in a few moments. Thank you for all the good times and laughs. You've been so amazing. Thank you for everything. So, hold up a minute. I see that once again, the story that we are needing to look at has changed. If you remember, when the story first broke, it was Tyler Robinson's father that ultimately got Tyler Robinson arrested. And then it became the supposedly trans, not trans streamer, potentially furry roommate, potentially love interest roommate that cooperated with the FBI that led to Tyler Robinson being turned in. But here in these alleged messages, we have Tyler Robinson telling everybody that he's going to turn in himself specifically. Okay, interesting. Let's go ahead and take a look further. So Trump and company portray the alleged Utah shooter as left-wing and liberals portray him as right-wing. The federal conclusion will inevitably be that he was a so-called nihilist violent extremist, an NVE. Meanwhile, the crackdown has already begun, as I reported yesterday. The country is practically ready to go to war. Is it? I'm gonna be honest, I don't think that's the case. I'm seeing a lot of right-wingers that are actively turning the clocks back on that rhetoric. Other than Tectone. Tectone seems to be trying to freak the fuck out about it even more. It's really weird. It's been so terrible, and seeing it from an inside perspective is so frustrating. A friend of Robinson since middle school told me. The childhood friend who asked not to be named for fear of threats provided me with the above non-public photo of Robinson on a camping trip to corroborate their relationship. They said, I think the main thing that's caused so much confusion is that he was always generally apolitical for the most part. That's the big thing. He just never really talked politics, which is why it's so frustrating. The picture that emerges bears little resemblance to the media version. Robinson, I am told, though quiet, was a well-liked person with a supportive family. The friend group who interacted with him on Discord far from some kind of militia camp or Antifa bunker as it's being portrayed as, is represented instead as a range of different political views, but everybody mostly just talked about video games. Yesterday, FBI Director Kash Patel said in an interview that Robinson subscribed to left-wing ideology, citing his family's remarks to the investigators. But those close to Robinson say that there was a lot his family didn't actually know about him. They said their ideas are based on someone they didn't fully understand, the childhood friend told me. Though the family was generally supportive of Robinson, a claim corroborated by his mother's Facebook account, brimming with praise for Tyler, they didn't seem to know about his relationship with a transgender person named Lance, the friend said. When I asked if his family would have been accepting, the friend replied, I don't think Tyler knew the answer to that question, which is why he kept it so low-key between themselves. Okay, interesting. Let's see here. Did you see hold on. Did you watch the Kash Senate hearing? Booker was pissed. I've only seen bits and pieces from the Senate hearing. Almost Cosmic Lord says this doesn't match up with the photographs of Robinson. Just saying this now. In what way? Anyway, I'm going to continue. Tyler's bisexuality, the friend said, was coupled with openness on LGBT issues, but his wasn't some cookie-cutter lefty position on every or even most issues. Obviously, he's okay with gay and trans people having a right to exist, but also he believes in the Second Amendment, referring to the right to bear arms. Okay, so that part's interesting to me because as far as I'm concerned, a world is better when we've got more trans women having AK-47s. So, like, I guess it just depends on how far left you're willing to be, but that doesn't necessarily mean we've got enough information to go off of, right? The friend described Robinson as a fairly typical young man his age from Utah, a gamer who loved the outdoors and guns. To all of us, he just seemed like a simple guy who liked playing games like Sea of Thieves, Deep Rock Galactic, and Helldivers 2. Well, we knew the Helldivers was definitely something he was into because of the up, right, down, 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 the ordnance drop from Helldivers being inscribed on one of the bullets. Sea of Thieves, we know that because we looked at the alleged account, because we saw the alleged Steam account earlier, and that definitely gave us that idea. Jassa says, do we even know, A, if either both or one is concerned with the roommate as trans at this point, and B, if their relationship was anything other than a roommate? We don't know yet. Now, there may be more information in here. Maybe. Let's see what we can find out. Said most normies equate trans policy with liberals who also hate guns. Well, yeah, that's because the majority of people on the left are liberals. Like, socialists and communists are way less normalized on the left outside of online spaces than you might think. Most people who are card-carrying Democrats are just run-of-the-mill liberals. They are pro-capitalist, but happen to be okay with a lot of social issues. That's what you tend to find. But let's continue looking through here. We obviously have the Helldivers stuff, one step closer to finding the DRG dwarves. The phrase inscribed on one of the bullet casings from the shooting was, "Hey fascist cats." The widely reported to mean he was a man of the left is in fact a reference to Helldivers 2. 3 arrows, initially believed by federal agents to be a reference to Antifa, is also just a reference to Helldivers. Private Discord messages shared with me by a friend of Robinson's confirmed that Robinson wasn't some political martyr. A search for posts on Robinson's contained keywords like Biden and Trump turned up just 1 hit each. The Trump post was a passing reference to the 2019 impeachment inquiry. The Biden one came from the day of the 2020 election, where he provided an update to another friend asking about the status of the vote count. Okay, so let's see here. Yep, there's the Zealous Monkey talking about the impeachment inquiry, Zealous Monkey talking about Biden. Interesting. So this is not a person who was open about his politics to most people, it looks like. Not in a general sense. The childhood friend is a member of multiple Discord chats with Robinson. He described the group as trying to grapple with Robinson's motive just like everyone else. Even the goodbye message he sent in one of our servers was hard to believe. We all just thought, what a weird joke to make. Then the news came out and we were all calling each other and saying, check the news. He said, yeah, I don't know what makes a person like him decide he's going to drive 260 miles upstate to shoot someone like Charlie Kirk, then come back like nothing happened. It leaves a lot of room for speculation and theories, which is why I think they're so rampant. So that's another wild thing. So I remember when this happened, I was on the way back from my friend Nick's house, and I was on the phone with Ocean. I remember that conversation being Ocean and I going, man, if this guy is more than a couple miles away... Also, Nova Winter, thank you for subscribing. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. But if this guy is more than a couple miles away, then the FBI is going to have a really hard time tracking him down, because that manhunt is going to be looking goddamn everywhere. But 260 miles of a drive upstate? That's an entire tank of goddamn gas for most vehicles. That's insane. Artemis says, will this be the new "Where were you when blank happened"? I don't think so. You see, the thing is, the right wing wants to turn Charlie Kirk's assassination into a rallying cry, much like the left turned the George Floyd killing into a rallying cry. The problem is, I don't know if the right wing of America rallies themselves around events like this the same way the left does. So, getting the right wing rallied around something is usually far easier, but typically, I see right-wingers freak out when they think their rights are being violated, and they come out in droves for that. Whereas left-wingers tend to respond reactively to social pressures, like what happened with the George Floyd assassination. I don't know if we're going to see the same upswing in right-wing activity that we did for, say, January 6th, or that we did for, say, the Freedom Convoy. So I don't know if we're going to have the same level of "where were you when X happened" here. Gainer says, I feel like it's less trying to rally the base and more using it as a justification for harsher military crackdowns. That seems to be more what I'm witnessing. I'm seeing more of like Laura Loomer trying to argue that she should be able to get more people fired and get more people in trouble for dancing on the grave of Charlie Kirk. I've said it before, and I'll say it again, I find no problem with dancing on the grave of a hate-filled person. I find a problem with celebrating the murder of the hate-filled person. You could dance on the grave, but don't drink with the killer. Part of the confusion he attributes is Tyler's quiet nature. He was a really smart guy, but super hard to read, stone-cold poker face, and you could always never be confident in assuming anything. When I asked if he opened up to anyone, the friend replied, as far as we knew, he was opened up. Despite his verbal reticence, Robinson was not a loner. According to his friends, unlike the stereotypical outcast shooter driven to violence by social rejection, he was apparently amiable and well-liked. See, that's the weird thing. I hear this shit about so many shooters. How many times have we heard, oh, they were just a normal person. They were just a normal, quiet person. And yet we see this over and over again. Now, take that with a grain of salt. I don't have direct data to suggest that, but that seems to be a pretty common thing that I hear a lot. Eric Lazama says sociopath? Maybe. So, like, sociopathy isn't a thing in the DSM anymore. So if we're talking ASPD, and I'm not an armchair psychologist, but like ASPD, usually you get people who will not communicate a lot of their internal monologue to people, or they'll communicate enough of that monologue to people in order to achieve certain results. You find a lot of people with ASPD tend to be very Machiavellian in that way. I don't know. I don't know if I can take this statement with more than a grain of salt. Everyone who knew him liked him, and he was always a nice, a little quiet guy, kept to himself mostly, wasn't a recluse. Regardless of the horrible actions that took place, we must take this moment to remember that God is a living and loving God who loves all his children. A Discord post from another friend posted the day after the shooting. While Charlie Kirk's politics were not acceptable to some, I ask that we all say a prayer for him and his family during these confusing times. Okay, so that's what we have right here, and I can at least agree with that. Eric says, as I understand it, if you don't communicate anything, people don't tend to like you. Not necessarily. So I'm going to let you guys in on a little secret. If you're wondering how to talk to people, if you're wondering how to get people to like you, it's not about explaining the aspects about yourself that other people ought find likable. The way that you get people to enjoy engaging in conversation with you is by asking those people questions about themselves. The thing that people love talking about more than anything is themselves. Now, you as an individual may have low self-esteem and may say that, no, that's not me, Chief, and to which I'll say, congratulations, you found an exception to the rule, aren't you a special boy? But I would also say that that's not true if you've got hobbies. You love talking about your hobbies. You love talking about your special interests. Those are aspects of yourself that you love talking about. And when somebody asks you information about that kind of stuff, you're going to remember that conversation infinitely more than any conversation where somebody tells you about themselves. We've done a decent bit of studies on this, and there's been a lot of books written about interpersonal communication, and the commonality between most people who get people to like them is that they don't talk about themselves. They ask other people to talk about themselves. And when you do so, you get some pretty awesome results in terms of getting people to remember you and like you. If you're ever having trouble when you go outside, if you're ever having trouble connecting with people, just ask them about the things that they enjoy. And I promise you, you're gonna have better results over time than if you just talk about the things you love. Jet says, I feel like I'm always the one asking though, so like if I don't talk about myself, no one's gonna ask. Right, that's the thing that makes you impersonable to people though. Instead of gushing about the things you enjoy, you ask other people about the things they enjoy. And that unironically leaves a stronger impression on people than when you talk about the things that you enjoy. And that's not you, Jet, that's like the royal you, people in general. There's actually a book that I read, what was it, like 4 months ago on this, about communicating with other people, and it works wonders. The more you find out about other people, the easier it is to prod for more information from them, and the more information you're able to prod from other people based on the things that they have told you, the more they want to talk to you, the easier it feels for them to talk to you. It's not about explaining the things you love or finding an opportunity to weave in your loves into the conversation. That stuff eventually can happen naturally, but the thing that makes the impression on people is when you're the one in the room not doing that, and instead are giving people the opportunities to talk about themselves. Also, my God, this shit is so cringe. Tectone, you've no idea what you've created. And it's just him looking like a fucking cryptid. Jet says, but that's what I'm saying, though. I love hearing about other people's stuff, but it seems like it just ends up with them taking me for granted. Yeah, that's gonna happen. That's human beings 101. There's gonna be a lot of people who take you for granted. It's just gonna happen. The more friends you have, the more likely it is that people will take you for granted in various friend groups. The more likely it is that those people don't actually care too much about you as a person. Because the more people you invite into your life and the more people that you open up to, that's going to happen. It's just a numbers game. The trick is to not let it get to you. The trick is to accept that as a factor of human communication as an adult and to not let it affect you. We created an edgelord. Oh no. The last message is religious in nature, which just goes to show the apolitical nature of the server. We all have pretty differing views on politics, the friend said in a Discord post. We all just exist as friends and just play stuff. Cat memes, weather updates, home improvement, the old Garfield reference. Okay. I'm gonna go to Eep pretty soon. Very Eepy, he said in one post, an intentionally silly misspelling of the word sleep, a common Gen Z convention. Or just an internet convention. Jepatique says, what I call it is, they don't like me, they like that I like them. It happened more when I was a kid too. Yeah, that just happens. That's just a thing with people. Sometimes you're gonna find people that are more willing to engage in your life. That doesn't matter though. This is just human communication 101. The other stuff that you're adding in there is superfluous and does not matter to the point. My point is about first impressions and how you get people to have an image in their mind of who you are. And the way you do that is by asking questions about them, their hobbies, their interests. The type of person that you invite into your life afterwards, again, that is a numbers game. I would not fret about it. You can't fret about it because you can't control other people. You can't manipulate other people. You can't change how other people see you. You can simply give them an impression that gives you a better chance. That's what you do. Says Gullible on the ceiling. Yeah, that's just a lot of memes. Just a lot of memes. Had to replace a monitor that was on a wall mount. The top 2 mounting points needed to have a standoff, but the person who did the install, or the initial install, didn't have them, so he just stacked like 6 washers to make the connection. You know the feeling? Jesus Christ. I mean, that's a valid way of doing it, though. That's a valid way of doing a fucking monitor connection. That's fine. The federal government, the Washington crowd, and the corporate media based in Washington and New York see the country in wholly partisan terms. Republican versus Democrat, red versus blue, old media versus social media, liberal versus conservative, right versus left, straight versus gay, and so on and so on. Charlie Kirk's assassination should remind us of the actual diversity of the nation and the cost of polarization that demonizes the other side. No one in Robinson's group is cheering or justifying the murder in any of the messages I reviewed. They're just struggling to understand what their friend did. But Washington has become obsessed with the Discord chat, convinced it's some kind of headquarters for the murder and a cauldron of radicalization conspiracy. Today, FBI Director Patel vowed to investigate anyone and everyone in that Discord chat. What I see is a bunch of young people who are shocked, horrified, and searching for answers like the rest of the country. For news that doesn't... Okay, and then that's just an advertisement for the guy there. I want to see some of the responses here. Ken Clips is the only one doing real journalism here. I had him pegged for a groiper, but I'm ready to be wrong. Inscrutable nihilist might be the answer in the end. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and throw out there right now, I don't know if Tyler Robinson actually is a groiper, but the groipers are the let it all burn people of politics. They are the inscrutable nihilists that find themselves on radical right-wing forums because that's the area where their language is far more acceptable. It doesn't mean that he is or is not a groiper, but an inscrutable nihilist and a groiper are not mutually exclusive terms to one another. The media is losing their minds to politicize a tragedy at the behest of an out-of-control executive. This is by far the most level-headed attempt to understand the person who murdered someone. Based on this and the reporting that he's not cooperating with the police, I suspect I won't fully know why until after a trial, and even then, another reason to tune out the talking heads. Yeah, agreed. This is... So, like, I've got a bunch of friends who are very, very invested in the idea that the guy's a groiper, and I am more willing to accept the guy's a groiper because that's where I see a lot of the evidence leaning, but I'm also ready and willing to be completely wrong there. And bear in mind, I'm saying I see evidence leaning that way. That doesn't mean that's a theory I'm willing to hang my hat on. Kiwi Bird says he may not be a groiper, but sure as hell quacks like one at times. Yeah. Does seem to be the case. Does generally seem to be the case. Although, that bears a weird question in mind. Just a strange one to throw at all of you. Have you ever met groiper women? Like, generally speaking, the audience that Nick Fuentes brings together is an audience of out of touch with reality, but in touch with online culture right-wingers. And that tends to be a very male-dominated audience. But there's always an exception to every rule. So there's gotta be groiper women, right? And like, if there are groiper women, are they hot? I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Lenari says, I get the impression that they're mostly male incels. Yeah, generally. The groipers sure seem to think that he's a groiper. So there are groiper femboys, apparently. Well, yeah, like Nick Fuentes himself fucked a femboy. At least as far as we can tell from the Nazi Catboy stuff. Kiwi Bird says, oh no, don't go down that path. Is that the don't go down the shoe on head path of having one set of ideals and then being attracted to somebody with a completely opposite set of ideals, whose ideals are actively, openly toxic to the movements that I want to support? Is that what you're saying not to do? Are you saying don't date a villain? I mean, I'm already dating one. It's like me and Saki are together, and I'm gonna leave it there. We don't have to go down the path Fuentes already did. True. But no, that said, Nazi Catboys rip them. Don't pull a Laverne don't pull a Laverne Cox. Daba Software, I don't want to pull Laverne's Cox. Gainer says Nazism can exist in any demographic. There are Nazi trans people, there are black Nazis, Hispanic Nazis, humans are weird. Right, but remember that, like, groipers and Nazis are not necessarily the same people. Nazis are Nazi ideology is larger in scope in group, as far as groups are concerned, whereas groiper ideology is infinitely more narrow and focused entirely on a singular figurehead and 4chan culture. Whereas Nazi ideology is a little more broad. It's still very, very narrow in terms of the political spectrum, but it's it's still more broad than just Groyper culture. Eric Lazima says, I guess Nazi ideology boils down to strong versus weak. Not really. There's plenty of people who agree with the strong versus weak dichotomy who don't necessarily end up being Nazis. Like, you really have to, if you're a Nazi, okay, if you're an actual Nazi, then there's a couple of beliefs you have. You tend to believe that there is an overarching group of people, usually it's Jews, but sometimes it's trans people, sometimes it's George Soros, who knows, that are controlling the strings of society, and that bugs the shit out of you. You also tend to have that very strong versus weak dichotomy as part of your moral fiber, insofar as you even have a moral fiber, but you also are a strict believer of hierarchy. You are a very strict believer of hierarchy, and that comes from that top-down ideology in general, that idea of weak versus strong, but you do tend to have that. You also, as an extension of that, tend to be in favor of eugenics. You also, because you're in favor of eugenics, you tend to be in favor of oppressing minorities, because that's what eugenics always leads to. And because you're in favor of oppressing minorities, that usually will lead to you also being in favor of a particular brand of nationalism. And if you're in favor of a particular brand of nationalism, you or a majority group will probably be at the top of that nationalistic structure. Like, there's a lot of comorbidities while also a lot of assumptions that come if somebody were to take on the Nazi title. Kiwi Bird says, yeah, back on topic, I was under the impression the Groypers were like Nazi femme catboys and the weirdo misogynist Nazis who want to sleep with them, and they spend their time bonding over hating women all over. Yeah, but that doesn't necessarily mean that there aren't women in Groyper culture. Gainer says, maybe this is just me not being in the know for a bit, but I always thought Groypers as terminally online Nazis, using the term to mask who they are. If the shoe fits. If the shoe fits. I guess, let's put it this way. All Groypers are likely Nazis, but not all Nazis are Groypers. There's a lot of different variants of Nazis, but most Groypers end up having an ideology that is very in line with Nazis. Pandora says, almost certainly a few suppressed trans girl Groypers. Yeah, probably. Anyway, that's all the information I have here, and that's a weird tangent to end that particular one on. Hey, thanks for making it to the end of the video. I really could not do any of this without all of you. Those of you watching, and especially those of you who support me on Patreon. I wanted to go ahead and take a minute to thank all of you who do that, because with YouTube being what it is these days, I really cannot do this full time without the support from each and every one of you. Those people would be Red Joker, Purple Poundini, Jemshin, Britzkrieg, Jupe the Malignant, Michael, Ravalern, Mabbity Babbity, Astral Frontier, Tales of Atonement, Nixie-chan, Kiri Artemis, Limor Pinku, Love Bunny Games, Victorian Alchemist, I'm not saying the last part of that, and you know that, Aurora, Leela Ururaka, Arcton Arclacier, Curatorian, Dren Hadamata, Jordan M, John L, Lord Bleck, Smiling Game Master, and Fireshard. Thank you so very much. But since you're here, why not go ahead and try watching another one? There should be one that's on the screen right now. And if you are a patron of mine, I wanted to go ahead and thank you again for all of your support. There is still a video you could press though, if you'd like. I would appreciate it. Just a little bit.